Check. Oh, I'm kind of far away from the mic. Hold on. All right, how's that? Is that better? Coming in at about -8. Oh.
Tonight, I knew.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good day, good whatever time it is that you're sitting down and catching up on your podcasts for the week. You are listening to the Drunken UX Podcast. This is episode number 20. We've been doing this now for 40 weeks, give or take. I'm pretty impressed, surprised that we haven't burnt out, decided to quit web development altogether. So here we are. I am your host, Michael Feenan.
I'm a co-host, Aaron Hill, and I think we're getting ready to give birth to our podcast baby now, right? 40 weeks.
I think, and Aaron had the bright idea towards the end of the year. We'll do like a little around what we've learned over the course of this past year, and share some thoughts about what it takes to put all of this together and do what do we do 7 days a month at this point. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll be fun.
Transcripts,
transcripts are playing a heavy role. At this point. If you want to check out the Drunken UX podcast run by Facebook or Twitter, we are /DrunkenUX there. We're on Instagram at /DrunkenUX podcast. I'm going to reach out to the person who has the Drunken UX Instagram account because they don't use it. And I'm going to take the chance that maybe I can convince them to give it to me if they even, if it's not a bot like that. We'll see.
That'd be cool. So for now, it's Drunken UX podcast.
Yeah, for now, it's Drunken UX podcast. Yeah. I can't fix that. But stuff, and we'll post some pictures here in a little bit of what we're drinking.
Yep. What are you drinking tonight, Michael?
We've all taken a page from each other. I'm going the direction of bourbon this week, not Scotch. So still whiskey, different grain.
Yeah.
Maker's 46. I have been training myself to like bourbon more and more, and Maker's 46 I rather enjoy, and we've got a guest with us this evening that I believe knows quite a bit about bourbon, so he may, I don't know if he's going to turn his nose up at me or not, but
I've got 2 bottles of that on my shelf right now. So.
Okay, so I chose well, apparently. I feel good about that. Aaron, what do you got, man?
I picked up a bottle of Angel's Envy. It's my first time having this one. It's pretty nice. It's I
love the bottle.
The bottle is gorgeous. I've got the photo that I'll be sending you to put up on Gram is it's got the bottle in the background so you can see it.
Yeah, nice.
It's really cool.
I like Maker's 46. I like Angel's Envy. Jefferson's Ocean I really like. I thought it was really gimmicky when I picked it up. But it really does have like a really kind of cool, salty, sort of briny flavor to it that is very nice. I've been learning. I'm learning more about bourbon. I know Scotch inside and out, but bourbon I'm still kind of figuring out. But
is that where they take do they take barrels from sunken ships and then use those to do the aging?
No, what they do is they take just whatever. I think bourbon is new oak, I think is what they use. And they put it on just like a container ship, a normal shipping container type deal that goes back and forth to China, Africa, or wherever. And
so it ages on the sea?
So it literally ages on the boat as it travels its courses. And so when you look at the bottles, they've got like a voyage number on the neck of the bottle, and you can go back to their website or whatever and look up where that bottle went and traveled. And each batch is supposed to be a little different because of where it went. But
okay, that is gimmicky, but that is really cool.
it's gimmicky, but like I say, I enjoy it. I think it's got a neat flavor that is distinct for what it is. So
cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
Joel is joining us this evening. I know he's also got a nice little glass there. We were talking about it earlier. Why don't you tell everybody what you're drinking?
Well, yeah, it's this great Irish distillery called Teeling. I'm drinking their single malt. They also have a single grain and a small batch that they distribute in the United States. But I had the chance to go to their distillery about 3 years ago, and it was a lot of fun. And it's whatever you've heard about Irish whiskey in the past, whether it was just Jameson or Powers or whatever you could scrape out of the bar next door. This is like fancy Scotch level whiskey. It's delicious.
Cool. Can you get it in the States?
Yeah,
Or-
you can. They distribute in the States now. They're pretty much everywhere at this point.
What's the
Cool.
age on it? Are they require, like, Scotch has to age them of, was it 3 years or something like that?
Right. So they're blending right now. They're fairly new out. Well, they're actually the oldest whiskey distillery in Dublin, but they shut down for 50 or 60 years and then started back up about 8 years ago. So they're just coming up on sort of their first tastes of some of the age stuff that they've been doing themselves. But for now, they've been blending from other places. So
That's cool.
yeah, there's no hard and fast rule in Irish.
Yeah, always looking for something new to try. And I don't remember who it was that recommended Monkey Shoulder to me. And I don't drink a lot of blended Scotch, but I was like, the name's cool. I trusted whoever it was that was recommending it to me. So I'll go try some. And I was really impressed with that. And so, and
Some good scotches in that blend.
yeah, there's real good Scotch in that. What is it? It's Kenichi, Balvenie, and something else. Yeah,
I forget the other one.
And the funny part is the one I'm forgetting is the other well-known one. But yeah, the idea of like a good eye, because I don't like. I mean, I'll drink Jameson. I don't like it. I don't drink it the way I drink Scotch. Like, I take a shot of Jameson.
No,
but having like a good like sipping Irish whiskey would be, I think, an interesting treat.
Yeah, totally recommend the Teeling whiskeys. They're delicious.
Okay, to get started this
Awesome.
evening, we'll come back to Joel in a minute. He's serving a very important purpose on tonight's episode. Obviously, as the guest, he's going to bring us a little bit of experience and knowledge and a topic that we have yet to reveal to you. I want to start, though, real fast, and this kind of is off the cuff, but I saw it earlier, and I think probably some other folks heard about Amazon announcing a bunch of new home devices, car devices, Echo, and Alexa-powered devices, everything from stuff connected to the Ring brand that they acquired earlier this year to a microwave that will order popcorn for you.
What?
Yeah, no, they went hard. A clock.
What does the clock order? More time?
I genuinely don't know what the clock does. I have no doubt it does something special. But the thing that I saw, and when I started reading about it, it almost felt too good to be true for me because it fits my needs exactly, and that's the Fire TV recast. You know what the Fire TV is?
Yeah.
The deal. I've got two of them in our house right now. I've got two of those, and I've got a Chromecast.
Right.
I almost never use the Chromecast. Once in a great while.
Right.
But I use our Fire TVs a lot. I've got one in the bedroom. I've got one right here in my office, and it has turned out to be, it works well. The little remote on it is really nice, and I've gotten to where I'm using it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm a cord cutter. We've talked, back in past episodes about using DirecTV Now or Sling, these services for.
That goes way back.
Yeah.
This was like our third or fourth episode, right?
Early episode.
Yeah.
But this idea that, I don't need a cable subscription now to get all of the TV that I don't watch.
Right.
But we do get, what I've got is I've got a home theater PC. I've got Kodi running on it with a TV tuner card, and I've got an antenna hooked up to it to record the network stations. I'm a football guy.
Okay.
I love this time of year. I need NBC. I need Fox. I need to be able to watch my football games. So we run the antenna, and then we supplement that with DirecTV Now. And I have this stupid mix of Kodi and PVR software that has to run a
Pabst Blue Ribbon.
What? No.
Oh, PVR. PVR.
We are going to take away your ability to name acronyms. This is not going well.
Oh, but it's so fun though.
There's
So you have a
a
PVR
script
and
that
Kodi.
runs to
What
go
else?
get the TV listings and port it into all. It's a nightmare. It works. And it works well for me, but it is a nightmare. So what Amazon has done is they have solved my exact problem, and they have released this, or they will be releasing this little box. It's $230. And it is designed to be hooked up to an over-the-air antenna, and it serves as a DVR for network stations
Whoa.
that ties into your home network and lets you stream all of that television to all of your Fire TV devices.
Huh. Okay, that's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. And it solves our exact problem in that now I can have it record everything. Of course, I have no doubt it will have the guide and everything built into it. So it gets rid of the scripting needs that I've got. It gets rid of a whole PC because I literally have a Windows machine that has to run all this. I can get rid of that whole computer. All of like my home media is on a network drive already, so I can point Plex or something like that at it. And now I just have this one little tiny box that records TV for me. And lets me, you can watch it too. Obviously, it doesn't, doesn't just record. But
what's the storage capacity?
It's not cool to tell. It's a small market kind of item, I think. But to drive, with the importance they're placing on Amazon Prime, trying to compete with Netflix for original programming and things like that, and
this is just
syndicated.
It's just intended for time shifting, right? Not for like archiving. Like how you might use a TiVo where you're just recording 10, 20 episodes of something.
Yeah, it's a DVR. It's got 500 gigs or a terabyte. Okay. There's two versions of it, and one's got 2 tuners, one's got 4 tuners. So if you're really heavy into recording all the things, I don't need that much. But like I've been looking at our home theater PC that I use, and it's starting to age. It's slowing down. It crashes every once in a while. The PVR software I use in the TV tuner card locks up every once in a while. So rebuilding that machine is going to cost me more than the cost of this little box anyway. So that by itself kind of pays for it. So I know that's not web related. It's not development related. I just think it's neat. And I wanted to show my support. I haven't bought into Amazon's ecosystem, but I think they're totally beating out Google when it comes to Fire TV versus Chromecast. And they are clearly going hard into the home Internet of Things mentality. So
Chromecast seems like seems like typical Google, where they have a really cool idea. It's like, check out this cool thing we made, isn't it neat? And then they don't follow through with it.
It's a Fire.
It seems like they have a lot of
advantages of the Fire Stick, basically.
Well, I don't. Can you like the thing that I remember really enjoying about the Chromecast, that I think my mom has one, is I was out there for the holidays one time, and my siblings and I were all like adding YouTube videos to the queue, and then it would play the videos from the queue, and I thought that was really cool. Or how you can like cast stuff directly from your mobile device to your television. And can the Fire Stick do that?
You can cast to a Fire Stick. I think there's something special you have to do to enable it or something like that. I don't do it enough, and that's kind of the thing about the Chromecast is like what you mentioned, and queuing stuff up is cool. I have never once had people over to actually do that.
It's kind of fun, but I mean, it's like it's not worth $30 for that. But
yeah, it's just it's so limited in that sense, and it's nice. Like I've used it before, for instance, and to shit on DirecTV Now a little bit. Whenever that had problems for me in Chrome, I can usually pull it up on a mobile device, and then I can just be like, just cast it and be done. But that's just, it's a fallback for me. It's not the actual way I do it. So, and I haven't had that problem with the Fire Stick. It's just worked. So
cool.
This evening though, we have with us Joel Goodman, who Joel has served as a creative and art director over the years. He directed web development over at Trinity National University and Greenville College, now Greenville University. And he currently owns and operates a company called Bravery Media out of the Wild West town of Austin, Texas. It doesn't get much more country than Austin these days, right?
I mean, it's the only city in Texas that you would ever want to live in, but it's usually not because of the cowboy stuff.
It's the capital, right?
It is the state capital.
And remind me, because you've moved around between the college and this. Are you from Texas or no?
No, so I grew up in Southern California, and then went to college outside of St. Louis at Greenville College, and then graduated. Couldn't get a job right out of college, sort of deal. Right around 2006, and so I started working at Greenville College, and then moved up to Chicago, and worked at Trinity, and then moved down to Austin.
Wow. Okay. So Joel is here to talk to us, and this is I was thinking about this earlier, and this is going to be kind of a really big build process episode, so to speak. And what we want to do is talk about this journey that Joel has gone on from working for other people to working for himself, and what it takes to become a web developer and run their own business, who can handle, their own clientele, and not just go out on your own, but what it takes to do that and what it takes kind of, be successful at that. Because at some point in virtually every designer or developer's career, they're going to take on side work, and they're going to think, this is cool. I could just do this instead of what I'm already doing because it's convenient. I can work from home. I can, so many people on web development and design because it feels convenient, and there are certain luxuries afforded to that if you feel inclined to take advantage of them. But it's definitely not that easy, and there are a lot of risks associated with it. So we want to talk about that, and I want to start at the start, obviously. So Joel, you're running a company called Bravery Media. Let's talk first about what it is that, what Bravery Media is, what you do, where it's been, and that foundation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I mean, like I was saying, my background is in higher education, much like Michael's, much like Aaron's. I had been working at these two different institutions for about 6 years, and realized that I wasn't. I was about to hit a wall. Like, I wasn't going to do anything else better for the university I was at. They had too many systemic problems that weren't solvable. And for me, one of the biggest frustrations in higher ed is knowing what exactly is wrong, and knowing that you're either going to sit and fight it for 6 years to not actually fix it, or you're just going to become kind of complacent there. And so I'd been doing a lot of side work, mostly WordPress sites. I had worked with a design agency out of Los Angeles, a friend of mine from actually an internship I had my senior year at college. And he had left and started designing websites for bands and actors and radio stations, and just all kinds of just random stuff. And so I had started working with him actually when I was still at Greenville, working on building these WordPress sites, and that's kind of how I cut my teeth in the whole web design development arena, so to speak. I've always built websites. I remember like sitting at my my Windows 98 computer in in early junior high with the HTML 4.01 Bible in my lap, and Notepad out, and trying to just write table-based websites with font tags and inline styles.
You're about the same age as
pretty close.
We are, I think, maybe a year, a little bit younger. So yeah, we all came up kind of in that same era, though, in terms of you sit down one day and you think, I can do this.
Yeah, you're like, I'm going to go over to Barnes and Noble and buy that Learn PHP in a Weekend book and sit down and learn PHP in a weekend. I never did that. I thought about it quite a few times, but never actually did it. I should have. But so Bravery, I got to the point where I had finished a master's degree. I was pretty much done with what I could do, or felt like I was done with what I could do at the university I was at, and decided that I had enough of a network in higher ed in particular, and had a strong enough portfolio of just design work that I had been doing, just kind of spot WordPress sites for something like 4 years of just random WordPress sites, that it would be okay for me to step out and start my own company. And because web design development was what I knew, that was kind of the obvious choice for me. And so my wife actually hopped on Google and searched where are the young kids moving, and Austin, Texas popped up, and we moved out to Austin.
And that's your name is Bravery Media, and I just need to kind of acknowledge how truly brave that is, because that is not an uncompetitive market to move into and say, I'm going to go do web development in Austin, where because South by Southwest is that's their home. That is the place to be doing that right now. So there is certainly I mentioned
Yeah.
the risk involved when you start your own business and go out on your own, and you kind of just said, "Screw it, let's do it."
I kind of got lucky a little bit, because I hit right before the giant like tech boom 2.0, because like Austin had its first tech boom back in the 90s when Dell opened up, and it was very hardware centric. We're selling lots of computers and we're doing med tech and like that kind of stuff. And eventually Dell kind of died for a bit, and and then they had a rebirth. But I hit Austin at a time when there were definitely startups here. There was a tech scene, but it wasn't in this frenzied, oh my gosh, everyone's got to move to Austin and start a business. It just wasn't that yet. That was that was probably 7 to 8 months after we moved here, and so I think I kind of lucked out a little bit. So I don't know if it was bravery or just being extremely naive, but I made it work.
I mean, yeah, any business needs you listen to, guys like Mark Cuban or any of those folks that they'll tell you have to stick your neck out if you're going to take that chance. And if you don't do it, you have no chance if you don't put it on the line once in a while. And I admit, to myself that that's probably one of my big failings, as a business person, is that I don't take enough risk, because I measure stuff and I look at my mortgage and I look at the bills and I think, well, let's not put that at risk just yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife is super gracious and forgiving, and actually likes a little bit of excitement and change every now and again. And so I lucked out on that side of things too. But it's true, if you don't take any kind of a chance, like it's not, nothing's going to happen. You gotta spend risk to, I don't know, spend risk to make risk. No, that's not the saying. That's not the saying.
What is it they say? Like,
yeah,
ships are safest in the harbor, but that's not what ships are made for.
Yeah, it's like my t-shirt tonight. Get push, get paid.
Yeah, I like that shirt and I want one. That's a good shirt. So let's talk about first the obvious thing. So Bravery Media is the company. I've done this. When I've had full-time jobs, I've gone out. People have come to me sometimes. They've found me rather than me find them. They say, "Hey, come, will you do this for us?" And I've moonlighted. And I was just, I was the word. I was freelancing. That was just extra money. You just throw it in on your 1040 at the end of the year, and you're good to go. What distinguishes, for folks thinking about this and thinking, well, I can go work on my own. What do you see that distinguishes freelancing from having an actual small business in this environment?
Sure. To start off, I think it's just positioning. A lot of it's marketing. For me, initially, it was just me. And I started my business and didn't want to be a freelancer. I think I wanted to, at least try to get a little bit more respect or a little bit more trust out of my clients. And so I called myself a boutique web shop. I definitely had some subcontractors, and I think that's kind of, for me, that's where I draw the line. I think it's different for anyone that's running a business, but for me, it's when I'm actually managing other people, whether they're people that are, full-time employees, which I don't have any right now, but that's coming, or it's just, the 15 plus subcontractors that I had at any given time last year. That to me kind of pushes you into small business realm versus just, hey, I'm the freelancer. Because when you're a freelancer, yeah, sure, you might, here's a secret for your listeners. Like, some freelancers do shop out their work to offshore overseas people. I'm just saying, they'll go on Upwork and they'll hire some people. That does happen. I never did it. I shopped out work to people that I knew and that I trusted, as a principal, and I still do that. as a principal, I go to, actual developers and actual designers that I have relationships with, or that I can develop a quick relationship with through another friend or another contact that I have and use them. But I think that's a little bit different when you're just one person doing kind of a small to medium sized project, and maybe you'll hire out some cheap labor to help you out with something here or there. That's freelancing to me. Small business gets into you're dealing with usually with larger clients. It doesn't have to be larger clients. You may just have more projects going on at a given time than one or two. I mean, there were times I had 8 projects going on at any given time, and I would not have thought of myself as a freelancer because I was doing way too much work. And that wasn't a healthy time in my life.
We've all hit that wall at some point, more than once, occasionally. So if for you in particular, and you'd mentioned, and I maybe I missed it, you said you got your master's. What was that in?
Yeah, so I did a master's in media studies online through the New School for Public Engagement in New York City. I think it took me 5 semesters. And for me, most people are like, wow, you got your degree in something that's not really useful at all. Because wow, media studies, great. It's like, if I wanted to go teach or do research, wonderful. But for me, it was really that I had been doing a lot of stuff. Like I had been building websites, and I'd been kind of like crafting web marketing plans and doing social media and doing, creating these weird, elaborate, like Facebook and web-based games to try and fight Melt for our incoming students. And that's that sort of thing. I hadn't really taken the time to stop and think about the theory side of it. And so I wanted to do a master's program that would help me think about some of that stuff and get some of the history and context to the stuff that I was already doing. I didn't feel like I needed to go out and get like an MBA. Like, I mean, that can be helpful for some people. Sometimes I wish I had an MBA, but at the same time, I can learn all that stuff separately, and I don't really care about the MBA title at all. So
it really goes back to that. What you're saying reminds me of when we had Greg Pedunovich on back in episode 14, design philosophy. And so much of what goes into design philosophy is very academic in nature. And it really, when you start taking the time to learn that stuff, that's when you really elevate, I think, both your experience and your ability, because now you can make educated suggestions. You can defend pitches to clients and things like that in ways that, for instance, a freelancer maybe can't. Freelancer is sort of the AAA league, so to speak, and then the business person is the one who has now entered the pros in that way.
Right.
The business person is the one that when you're an employee, the management will always trust the business person over your opinion. So
yeah, right. For me, it was really just another input for creativity. It was, I wanted more fodder for thinking about, how do I do design? How do we communicate better to people? How do we, when we for a while we've done logos. There was probably a good 2 years where we did a ton of logo work for people. I'm terrible at identity. I'm really good at the concepting part of it, but the execution isn't really my strong suit. And so I would bring on other designers that I've known for years who are really good at that execution side. And so having all of this input in terms of like semiotic theory, actually, Aaron and I were talking about a little bit about this earlier. Having a basis for semiotic theory, and how do you like pack as many different symbols into the one icon that you're going to use? How do you, color theory and typography and all this stuff that makes people have an emotional connection with your website or with your app or whatever it is. Having the background that I got for, in my master's was only helpful in that. And it's stuff that it would have taken me a lot longer, because I think I'd have a hard time staying focused without the rigid academic program to, throw books at me and say, read this, and then having to write papers about it and everything else. I think those sorts of input points are crucial to staying relevant and being good at what you do.
I think media studies sort of. I know you were kind of joking about it earlier, but I mean, I think that at its core, it's a communications program, right? Like it's.
Uh, so I have a communication background from undergrad, and so I kind of went at it in that direction.
Okay.
It's weird though, because it also comprises, like, I mean, I guess you could boil it down to that. It comprises like film studies and stuff like that, which a lot of times would be in other departments. But yeah, I think it's a very safe assumption to think that it's a communication degree. But I don't think many of the professors would say that.
So like in working in web, like web is at its core a communication medium, and it's really easy to get lost in the like, oh, we need to have a logo, we need to have a masthead, we need to have a website, we need to have an email form, etc. But like if you're not thinking about it from a communication standpoint, or like messaging or branding or anything else, you're just kind of spinning your wheels and or throwing mud at a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's completely true.
I love too the sort of vulnerability of hearing somebody else say, like, I got this degree, I don't know how useful it is necessarily, because I emphasize a lot that I have a communication degree. I don't have a master's. I only have a BA. But I value my communications degree. However, the emphasis of my program was theater. And I always go out of my way to tell people that, because I think it's important to understand that, there are a lot of cross-valuable skills and things that you learn that can be applied to places. But the other side of it is that studying one thing does not shoehorn you into the career that you end up in. Whether I kind of fell into web development. I built websites for a long time, but I didn't choose it. Yeah. But I'm 36 and I'm still faking it till I make it, brother. What's the old?
You're just method acting a web developer, aren't you?
What's the phrase that as long as you walk into a room and say it with authority, you can convince people of anything. So
that's your next conference talk, is method acting through imposter syndrome.
I mean, and I think that's an important point. You know, it doesn't really matter what degree you got. Like I'm a big proponent of the liberal arts, because I personally have benefited a ton from having all these different ideas and being able to kind of like meld them together. And that's why I can go and speak at a content strategy conference. And I'm not really a content strategist, but I am at the same time. You know, it's not, I wouldn't say that's like my primary job ever. And I have friends and colleagues that, are getting master's degrees in UX design. And I do a lot of UX design, but I don't necessarily like have that whole academic side of it. And I don't necessarily know that, that I want to. Like, I mean, part of me wants to, but part of me also doesn't want to spend all the time and money doing it. But it's, it's interesting to be able to have these degrees that, aren't necessarily what we're doing today, but being able to, being people that are equipped to pull out the parts that are relevant to the job that you're doing now, and being able to apply that in whatever situation it is.
Yeah, so speaking about like what you're applying and what you're focusing on there, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but I'm assuming that you aren't great at everything. You have strengths and weaknesses as much as any of us.
Tell them how you really feel, Michael.
Right, yeah.
The question that I'm driving at is, what parts of this process do you enjoy the most, as far as like when you sit down with a client or somebody brings a project to you, which parts of that get you most excited and are you most eager to sink your teeth in more than others?
Yeah, this has changed a ton over time. I mean, Bravery's been operating for 6 years, and then I had 6 years at 2 universities before that. And so this has changed. There are times in my career where I have loved doing the design side of it. Like, and I remember like I never considered myself a designer, and then someone called me a designer, and I felt really great about myself. Like, really, you think my designs are good? And then I was like, yes, I'm going to keep designing. And then, in my head, I'm like, ugh, I hate all this stuff that I'm designing. Like, it's just really not, and I have so many friends in Austin in the design scene that are incredible designers. they do spectacular work, and I'm lucky to be able to like hire them on for projects occasionally, but even luckier just to be able to hang out with them and see the work they're doing and have, fun conversations and stuff. And there have been times when I loved doing all the development, and it was like, I think part of that is, you guys probably have this same sort of outlook on it. If you give development over to someone else, they're going to do it wrong.
Even if they do it right, if it's them doing it, it's wrong.
And that's really
It's wrong.
Even if they do it right, it's gonna be like, well, I would have done this part this way, and that's been a very difficult and challenging thing in my business, because the first 2 or 3 years it was me, like I was doing everything end to end. I might have a person that could step in and help me out if I needed a lot of like a lot of help with something, but the margins were low. I wasn't able to charge a proper rate for the work I was doing in a lot of cases. And that was really draining and got me to the point where, at this point I'm kind of like, yeah, I can do it. Like I can dive in and write some really badass SaaS and like, set up a really awesome website that does everything that I want to do. You go and use like CSS grid and all kinds of crazy positioning stuff. I just got to use position sticky on a project recently. It was amazing. Like all this new or semi-new stuff that's sitting in CSS, or, like feeling those little wins when you figure something out in PHP or in Ruby or in Node or whatever.
Every time I use Flex, I feel like a wizard.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's really like a self-congratulatory sort of CSS property there. But it's at this point, what I really love is the strategy side of it. And I think part of it is that I see a lot of the same stuff happening in higher ed products in general, and in other places too. It's like, okay, here's the strategy. And it's a strategy that's been repurposed for 4 or 5 other clients that, whatever agency has. And, for me, like I like coming in and saying, wait, just because this worked over here doesn't mean it's going to work here. Let's see if it's going to work. Let's look at the students you have, the audiences you have. Let's look at the goals you have. And maybe parts of what I did are going to fit, but I like improving on all those stuff or all those things all the time. Like every time I go into a project, I want to go and, use something that I learned the last time around, but make it better and kind of expand it. And so doing strategy, whether that's, the actual strategy side of setting up a website. I don't really like doing the information architecture stuff, but I do like doing conversion rate optimization types of things. I like to do general optimizations, like speed, like fixing, code therapy actually for some reason makes me feel pretty good.
I love that phrase. I haven't heard that before, but I love that. The idea conveyed by code therapy.
There's a lot of code that needs a lot of therapy out there.
You could create the next industry around a phrase like that. So keep that in your back pocket.
It's code therapy. Yeah. So it's I like doing all the planning and strategic things. Those are the things that make me feel the best about myself and about my my talents. And that's kind of, this year that's basically what I've been doing. It's been a lot of strategy work. Last year was a lot of design development with some strategy, and now the strategy side's kind of shifted over. And that's, to me, that's, I don't know, I feel like that's where the biggest gains are. Content strategy, actual digital strategy, like digging into like setting up websites, even like tech stacks and making recommendations. That's, it's true. You always want to be a consultant at some point in your career.
What's the stuff you still want to do though? Like if you've done all those things.
So Bravery has been going pretty well for 6 years. I'm not hungry. I have bought many guitars.
It is. You are in Austin.
I'm drinking a nice whiskey right now. Bravery's been really good. And when I started Bravery, a lot of my mentality was, I don't want to work on one thing forever. I want projects. And now I kind of just want to build products and find ways to develop tools that can be used within these different websites, probably starting with higher ed, because that's the vertical that I know, and that's where I have the best connections. But I think that's probably the next frontier with this. I would honestly like Bravery to have, actual full-time employees and be at a point where I can start developing a company culture, and also just take care of a lot of the workers that I like throwing them spot work during the year, but I'm also just like, man, it'd be really cool if I could like hire them full time and pay them a really good wage, and like retain their skills forever. Like those are things that we haven't been at a place yet where we can make that happen, but I still want it to happen, and that's kind of what I'm working toward.
Man, I was looking for a philosophical answer there, and you went somewhere that I think is even better. That idea of being able to say, like, the thing I haven't done yet is give other people a career is kind of like, that's like the ultimate answer. So
that's like the meta career.
I swear, man, I've done everything I feel like I can to try to give people as close to that as I can. But once we kind of turn the corner and I'm able to actually give people that kind of security, and even be able to give myself that kind of security, because I'm still at the point where, like, I'll bill a project, and we'll probably talk more about this in part 2 of the show, but like I'll still take jobs and then just like put a giant amount of money in the bank just to have padding in case I don't get another job for 4 or 5 months, and be able to live on that. And because sometimes that's the reality of doing this kind of work.
Right. Yeah. And so we aren't done yet. We're going to take a break, and we're going to go refill our glasses and go to the bathroom. Probably some of us, maybe. I need to. Sorry, guys. TMI? I'm drinking Makers. This is what happens. In the next half, we're going to be talking more, though, about the actual logistics of how do you start this, what you need to think about to be successful, what tools are important to running, a good little small web development business, and a whole lot more. So sit back, relax, go refill your glasses. We will refill ours, and we will be back in about, give us 45 seconds. The Drunken UX podcast is brought to you by our friends at NewCloud. Are you trying to build a case around an interactive map for your school, city, or business? NewCloud's interactive map platform gives you the power to make and edit a custom interactive map in just minutes. Their team of professional cartographers specialize in map illustrations and are ready to design a rendering to fit your exact needs. One map serves all your users' devices with responsive maps that scale and blend in seamlessly with your website. Visit them online to request a demo at newcloud.com/drunkenux. That's nucloud.com/drunkenux. Hey folks, thanks for sticking with us. You've been listening to the Drunken UX podcast. This is episode number 20. I haven't thought of a title yet, but I'll think of it before it goes live. I promise you that. I am Michael Feenan, and joining us this evening is Joel Goodman. We're talking about how to start your own web business, basically. We spent the first half of the show. I'm sure you were here. We talked about kind of how it happened and what that motivation was. And I find it interesting that, Joel, you went into talking about like how you enjoy the strategy part and things like that, and talking about these designers who are fantastic. And I've seen your design work, and it is so much better than what I can do. That like. I think of you when I think of good designers. So let's ring that bell.
Well, that makes me feel really good.
Yeah,
I'm flattered. And that's the thing. Like I'm probably way harsher on myself than most people are. But it's more like I have this vision in my head, and it's not what I can do.
I have also seen Joel's designs and worked with them, and they're great. They're very contemporary. You should hire his business if you need that kind of work.
Very contemporary.
Well, they're not. You laugh, but I have seen work that other quotes designers put out.
Yes,
not contemporary.
I was making, and for our listeners, if you would like your very own Drunken UX podcast sticker, we're gonna have some of those soon. I'm gonna have a stack with me at High Ed Web as well, so you can hit me up there if you want to just grab one from me. But I was trying ahead of time to like outline it just to do the vector, just to get the outline I wanted. And I gave up before I was even halfway through. I'm just like, no. And it turns out Sticker Mule will do that. This isn't a plug for them, or they aren't paying me to say it, but you send them your graphic and they will just say, oh, here's the die cut we would recommend. And I was like, go nuts.
Yep. They had that little bit of padding on there, and yeah.
Are we doing the die cut ones?
We are doing die cut. Yes, they will be die cut.
So, also not a plug for Sticker Mule, but Joel actually referred me to the Unix sticker giveaway they did. Well, it wasn't a giveaway, it was $1. But I got them, and they're awesome. My only gripe is it didn't have any Ruby stickers, but it did have Python and Golang and Bash and Git and everything else.
Yeah, I immediately thought of you, Aaron, when I saw it. Came across there is an email or I got pushed an ad or something, but yeah.
I just want to mention to folks too, this Makers 46 I forget because I rotate what I drink so much. I forget how much I like it. I also forget how easy it gets to drink. So I apologize for all. We haven't even really started the second half yet, but I'm just apologizing for it now because
if you get into Makers, if you get into like their like limited release like single barrel stuff, it starts to like chocolate. Like it's crazy. Makers 46 has a little bit of it, but yeah, they're like limited release single barrels are crazy good.
And Makers 46, like, I mean, it's not cheap, but it isn't really that expensive. In the grand scheme of whiskey, like it's pretty affordable. And man, yeah, I'm in. Let's get this ball rolling though. Okay, so let's see. I'm looking at my notes here. We're talking about how to get started. So I think the very first question that we need to answer for folks is who should consider starting their own business. And I want to frame this question because it does take a mentality. There are a lot of people who think they can run a business and it's just not their strength. It's maybe not their strong suit. So let's talk a little bit about what you should have, what kind of skills that you should be focusing on, what you should have done beforehand before you just say, I'm 22 and I can run a business, because, we've all said that once.
I mean, and maybe you can.
22 is the right age to make that kind of mistake, though.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, you're not going to hurt yourself too much.
Yeah.
It's okay to say that. Like, if you're 22 and you're listening, more power to you. And if you think you can run a business and you say, I can do that, that's great. Just make sure you can first. It's okay to say it. Let's talk about how you do it.
So normally I'd answer a question like this with, something about like, well, you need to be entrepreneurial. But honestly, when it comes down to it, people that aren't entrepreneurial don't think about starting their own business. Like they're happy in their jobs, they're happy moving up, or they're happy, trading in one position for something lateral at a better company where they can move up or whatever. So, this kind of assumes that, a person is already a little bit entrepreneurial. They're thinking like, I have this idea for a business, or, maybe like me in, junior high or early high school, you had an idea for a skate clothing brand and you downloaded some free fonts and a pirated version of Photoshop. I paid for it later. I'm sorry, Adobe.
Nobody ever did that. Nobody did that. That was just you.
Sorry, Adobe. And put together some like, some lousy little logo and sent it off for some like grab bag t-shirt deal that I saw where you get t-shirts like $3 a piece with a single color screen print. And I had tons of t-shirts in my room for a long time because I couldn't sell them. But at least I tried. And I had a lot of t-shirts to wear with the same logo on it. Maybe you're that type of person. It could just be that, a lot of people get to the point where they've felt a little bit restrained. They've maybe thought about having a business in the past, but really it comes down to like you're in your job, and like me, you feel like you can't really go any farther. Like maybe there's actually no other position you can get to, and it's just time to take your smarts out and use them. Sometimes it's that the job you're in just isn't, it's not cutting it anymore. Like, that there are limitations that you're going to hit and you don't want to do it. Or for me, I was tired of fighting to do the most basic of cool things, like just tooth and nail fighting to,
Mhm.
do a Facebook app back, when Facebook apps existed. Um, and so it helps to have that drive. So it could be entrepreneurial, like, deep rooted. It could be just, you're coming up as a new entrepreneur. And then I think second, it's really helpful to have a portfolio of work. So whether you want to be, a designer, or you want to be a web development shop, if you're a developer, get that code up on Git. Like, have something to show people. And it may not be, you may have clients that have no idea, but chances are they're going to have some programmer, some tech, or maybe the owner's nephew who, you built their last website for $15 or whatever, taking a look at it. It helps to have that code out there and to be able to show it. And if you're a designer, set up a quick little website. It could be a single page, could be a WordPress site, could be whatever, with screenshots of some stuff that you've done. And if that stuff's still live, links, if you're proud of it, links out to that stuff.
Is there like a good minimum number for a portfolio?
It depends on how good your work is. I think, like, honestly, I think, like, if you're kind of mid-range, and I think the majority of people that go out and start their own web development or web design shops, they're kind of in the mid-range of stuff. They're a little bit confused about who their clients are going to be and what market they want to target and stuff. I think having 10 to 15 and front loading the really good ones is helpful. But I think if you're a really good designer and you've already been winning awards, like 3 to 5, and I've done both. Like, I've had Bravery websites where we have shown all of our design work, and I've had Bravery websites where we've shown a highlight of the most recent ones, because at some point when you've been doing it for 3 or 4 years, the stuff you did 3 or 4 years ago isn't really gonna sell you, because that was a long time ago and things change very quickly in this industry. So yeah, it really just depends on the quality of the work that you have.
That's interesting too. I never thought about the question of what's the right number. But I love that argument of, if you're a coder, I tell people all the time, you have to start somewhere, and you have to put code out there for other people to see. GitHub's free. There's no reason you can't show me what you're capable of, in terms of, if you want me to hire you.
Totally.
I need to make time to do that.
And I went through that this year. I was doing a consulting gig for a university in San Diego, and part of that consulting gig was helping them basically hire their dev team to build out their new website. And so many of the applicants had nothing to show, and like, they just had a list of, like, well, here are the scripting languages I know, and I've done some websites, but no, they're all private and you can't see them. And
that is often the case, though.
Yeah, how am I supposed to judge you on that? I'm going to judge you negatively on that, because I have no idea. I'm going to presume that you're lying to me until I can actually see the code that you put out in the world. But it's important to show any work that you've done. And then I think on top of that, it helps to have leads lined up already. When I moved to Austin, I had a friend from grad school who was working at a startup here, and they needed a designer, just an interface designer. And so I got on a retainer with them and designed for them for 3 or 4 months. And that was the safety net that we really needed to make it less risky. You can look internally, like, maybe your current job, you've made yourself indispensable. And if you haven't, maybe, like, wait 6 months to step out and make yourself indispensable in those 6 months. Little strategy. So that when you leave, you can just sign a contract to finish up projects that you were doing, or to help them think about the next things, still be making money for stuff. You give them a good transition period out as they're hiring the next person. And then, hopefully leave with a good relationship, because there's nothing worse than being like,
later, bitches.
Yeah, exactly. Like, see ya. Like, I'm gonna burn this mother down. Like, you don't want to do that.
If you. You're cool.
Really emphasize that when I talk with folks about, there are a lot of people who are very willing to leave a job on bad terms, let's say.
Hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like anytime you cannot burn a bridge, you should take that road, because those are
Yeah.
people that, if it's not
Yeah.
your boss, it could be coworkers, it could be a person in another office that you worked with regularly. Those are references, those are, and that's whether you're starting your own business or just looking for another job. Those are people that when they hear the story of how you left, middle finger in the air, they may not be as flattering for you anymore. And that's something that you really have to be mindful of. And so I think my answer to this question is kind of, if you're going to go this route, you have to be a little bit mindful of that this, my way or the highway mentality.
Right.
Yeah. It may work for a agency, that builds its brand that way, but it's not going to work for anybody else.
Yeah. And I mean, I have one more point in this that comes, right off of that, plays into it. It's very helpful to have built up a really healthy amount of professional respect in your industry before you go on your own. So whether that's, like me, I did high ed web. I went to tons of conferences. I was active in, different groups and forums and IRC chats, and back before we had Slack. Wow, it's a long time ago.
You mean visual Slack?
Visual
right?
Slack, yeah. But I think about Michael, thinking back to your .cms days, if you can, if you can think back that far. But I mean, there are still people that I develop relationships with in IRC and forums and emails, just asking about that stuff and learning through a very specific content management system and how it worked that I talk to today and know today. I mean, so building relationships like that, and building good relationships to the point where those people respect you and respect your work, only pays dividends in the end. Like, those are the people that are going to be, they're going to send you emails and say like, hey, someone came to me with this job and I'm not doing freelance. Are you interested? Or they're going to say, hey, we're coming up on a web redesign, or we need to build out this, random microsite or whatever. We have this idea. Can you do it? And they're going to think of you because you've developed that relationship. So I think that's a decent roundup of initial things to consider as you're going into it, kind of more philosophical side of stuff, I think.
Just sidebarring on the 1 second, sidebarring on the portfolio thing. I just thought of this. If you are one of the people who all of your work has been on like intranet or private websites, and you don't have anything on Git, October is probably when this episode will launch, right? Hacktoberfest. So DigitalOcean sponsors Hacktoberfest every year. You can search on GitHub for the Hacktoberfest label, and if you submit 3 pull requests to repos that have signed up with that, they will send you a t-shirt. And on top of that, you get pull requests on your GitHub history that you can cite. Failing that, doing like the silly puzzles and stuff like exorcism.io, which I mentioned before, and some of the other things that Michael and I have mentioned on this show, write those solutions and put them up in your GitHub repo. Just, anything at all is better than nothing.
Man, you had to bring that up because I told you before I was looking forward to that this year. And I hadn't even thought of it. So,
yep, next
Carve out
week,
some time,
right?
It's the 25th.
Wait, what's today's date?
We're coming up on the end of it. So
next week.
October is coming real fast. Okay, so let's talk about what people need to think about as they're setting this up. So let's say you are that person. Let's say, I think the answer I have to that question of who should set it up, make sure that you're setting up your business because you're good at what you do, not because your ego is telling you to do it. And if you're
or both of those things at the same time, but never just the ego.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about just the set of it, right? Because that in and of itself, because you're going to run a business now, you're going to be a business person. You need to have a business mentality. So let's think about what goes into some of that, in terms of, I think, and for folks who have listened to a lot of the show now, you will have noticed a trend that Aaron and I dip into the higher ed well a lot.
We have a lot of experience
But
there.
we do that for a reason, because it is the area we know, it is the experience we have. And I mean, I'm just going to be honest, some of the best people or jobs that I know have all come out of that industry.
Yeah.
And so if you're thinking about setting this up, I think, we need to start there in terms of understanding what your business is, right?
I think figuring out what your focus is going to be is really important. I remember I was, this was maybe 2.5 years ago. I was giving a talk on, I think it was titled Freelancing 101 or something at a General Assembly here in Austin. And I remember talking to so many people that were like, yeah, I just moved to Austin and I'm just going to freelance and do contract work. And I was like, okay, yeah. You have any work lined up? Like, no. How do I do that? I was like, well, what kind of work can you do? Like, I just do web design. And it's like, you can't be, general industry. You can be general industry. You're going to make your life so much harder. And for a number of reasons.
It's like going to LA to be an actor or an actress.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's so much harder to, especially if you live in a place where there are other web developers and web designers, any sort of metro area or any creative town in the country, you're going to have so much competition from people that are trying to do exactly the same thing you are. And they probably know people, and don't move to one of those cities just expecting to be able to dig in and become a successful freelancer. You really need to have some kind of a focus. And so, like Michael was saying, the niche that I picked was higher ed because I knew higher ed, and I'm able to branch out into startups because I now know startups after working with a bunch of them accidentally in Austin. But that maybe med tech, or maybe you're really interested in it and you think there are problems that you can solve there. Maybe you choose medical. Maybe you are, a great photographer or are a great photographer yourself, and you can go out and do, restaurant websites. Sorry to spoil it. The more popular and famous the chef, the less they're going to pay you. But as I forget what episode number it was, but as one of the episodes on this show talked about, restaurants need a lot of help. And
kiss Pam.
Yeah, and you can always, feel free to hit me up later, and we can talk about my experiences doing restaurant websites too, because they can be a lot of fun, but they can also be difficult. Or it could be anything. You could decide that you want to build websites for lawyers. I don't know. But it's important to pick something specific that you can, in a sense, own. And
can you elaborate on why that's important? Like, what's the tacit advantages of going into a niche specifically and specializing?
Sure. I mean, I think a big part of it is that if you're an unknown person, if you're kind of brand new on the scene in particular, if you're just being a generalist, generalist in terms of, what verticals, what industries you're working in, you're going up against 100 times the number of people that you would for, and, depending on it could be more than that, depending on what city you're in. If you choose, restaurants, there's going to be a few people around that do that, but you may be going up against 5 to 10 versus 250 different agencies, or 500 agencies that are doing everything. So it sets you up for success. That's really the point. Okay. And it sets you on a trajectory to own that as an expert, to own that field as, the best for, I want to be the best in whatever I'm doing. And, I haven't quite hit that in higher ed yet. At least not like the default that everyone thinks of. I think we do a lot of really, really good work and some really great work too. But if I go into any industry, I want to own it, and I can't see myself starting out and owning everything web design. So I think that's the main reason I would go with a niche. It cuts down on the competition against you and sets you up for better successes.
Okay. And we talked about this a little bit in, I think it was the episode Coding 9 to 5, when we were talking about kind of just that process of learning and getting started. And the idea of, especially if you are not a developer that is wanting a new career or something, or you're somebody. I think the example we used was real estate. That if you're a realtor who wants to branch out, your expertise in that field is what makes you special. It's what gives you that advantage and that edge that I would never try to go build a real estate website for somebody right now. That would be a terrible decision for me because I don't know the market. I don't know what competitive advantage they need. I can guess. I can certainly make what I would hope would be educated guesses there, but I think people have, somebody in that field would have a way better advantage, and that's where somebody going into that has leverage. Let's talk a little bit about the super non-sexy part of this, though, right? Because there is the legal side that even if you're freelancing, you need to think about a little bit that there are taxes to be paid. There are licenses to be acquired in some cases.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the first thing is that if you're going to do business under any name other than your own personal name, you can't just go out and, I mean, you can just go out and do that, but it's illegal. You most likely need to register what's called a DBA, or a doing business as name. Usually they're cheap. In most states, they're super, super cheap, and you would file that.
It's like 100 or less.
Yeah,
right?
I think I paid. I want to say I paid like $60 in Austin, and I still own it. And I mean, now I have an LLC, and so, and so you'll need to do that. I would also recommend talking to a lawyer and potentially an accountant. You can maybe get by with a lawyer, or maybe you have a relative or a friend who is a lawyer, or is married to a lawyer, or dating a lawyer. That works too. But I think,
but pay them.
Yeah, right. Or just pay them. But there's they can help you decide whether your business needs to incorporate as a limited liability company or an S corp or something else for tax purposes. The way that I did it was I started out with a DBA, and I ran that for about 2 years. And then when we started making enough money where the personal taxes started to hurt, I went and formed an LLC because there's a little bit better in the tax break side of it. An accountant, honestly, there are so many people that want to do their taxes on their own. If you're one of those people, that's awesome. I would rather pay my accountant what I do and be able to focus on the work that I'm doing instead of having to hassle with all that. I think
that's a time value.
It's a time value there. And you'll never, they won't get things wrong. There's so many benefits to paying an accountant. So I always recommend an accountant.
So one additional thing though is don't just pay the accountant at the end when you're doing your taxes. At the beginning, before you start doing anything, talk to the accountant so they can tell you, pay them for an hour of the time and get the answers about what things you should be tracking.
Or just set them up for bookkeeping services too. And then you don't have to worry about any of it.
Yeah. Depending on what your opening capital is, I guess. Yeah. But I bet at least find out what you should be tracking and what sorts of things will matter, because at the end of the year when you're filing, they're going to want to know okay, well, did you drive anywhere?
Right.
What did you purchase this year? And you want to have those receipts, but you don't a lot of things you don't need receipts or they're irrelevant. And so it just helps keep the signal and noise separated.
The other thing is if you're solo, you're going to have to pay, and you're doing as a DBA, you're going to have to pay quarterly income tax. And people don't really tell you that. And if you don't pay your quarterly, you actually pay 4 times a year, you will get a pretty hefty fine added onto your tax liability at the end of the year. So pay those quarterlies or hire an accountant to manage it for you.
And just so our listeners know, for instance, even our silly little podcast here is technically operated under an LLC that I started specifically to compartmentalize my business operations outside of my normal day job. And it's not because it makes me any money, because I can assure you that I do not make money doing this, but it protects things. And that's extremely important when you are doing work for people that could negatively impact their business. Because sometimes having, that little clause in the contract of, the hold harmless clause, sometimes that ain't good enough. Look at that, and depending on what the situation is, they could say that that's not enforceable in that situation.
And that leads me to my next point. Small business insurance is really important, y'all. Because for those things, if something gets messed up somewhere along the line, or some clause is left out of a contract or something, you're going to want to be insured. And I mean, to be honest, if you're working with any larger companies, if you're working with universities or with corporate clients, they're going to require that you hold small business insurance, just to
Right.
bid on a project. It's actually pretty cheap. And there's some new one there. I can't remember the name of it, but there was some new one that I saw recently that I was thinking about switching to. But there are a lot of startups that are kind of entering this fray of how do we make insurance easy for small business owners, because the gig economy and all that.
So let's spend some time now. Let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about. So that's the boring side, the legal side, and I don't want to give much information there, advice there, just because literally every state's going to be different. You mentioned the DBA stuff. In Kansas, you don't have to file a DBA.
Oh, they don't care at all. That's awesome.
No, if you're like in this case, the Drunken UX podcast is a DBA of Phenon LLC, but I don't have to file that. I don't have to do anything. I just have to say it. Every state is going to be different. The tax implications are going to be different. So
I have to pay for that.
When we say that you should go talk to a lawyer, talk to an accountant, that's for your own good, and it's spend money to make money.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost very much. And for instance, here, even in Pittsburgh, small town, we have a small business development center. It is free to go in there and sit down with one of their folks to talk about your business and what you need to know and consider.
Yeah.
From everything from taxes to licensing to copyright to all these things. And most big cities have something like that. So if nothing else, go talk to them and they can at least tell you what to look for.
I would say, as a rule of thumb, as someone I've done my own taxes since I was 14, and I actually have a degree in accounting as well, from many, many, many years ago. But just as a rule of thumb, when you're figuring out what to charge your clients in terms of knowing what your tax liability is going to be, expect it to be about a third, roughly, give or take. If you're self-employed, I mean. If you're an LLC, it's going to be
usually a quarter, depending on what you do annually. But yeah.
So just like kind of earmark that.
So let's talk a little bit about the tools from here.
Oh, yes.
And this can be a very general kind of topic.
I
as far
so
as
many
I'm concerned.
tools.
Right. Everybody bounces around the tools, and I don't want to put a lot of emphasis on anything because the tools can change very quickly. But certainly from the logistical side, still, when we talk about whether that's billing, I've used FreshBooks in the past. I've just used PayPal for invoicing. Is there anything that you found more effective for yourself, especially as you've grown a little bit?
Yeah. So I really like the products that allow me to do as many tasks that are connected together at the same time. And so for billing, I want whatever I'm using to also allow me to send out the contracts, to send out the invoices. Well, billing would be the invoices, to track time, allow me to put in the types of tasks that I'm going to be using and that sort of a thing. So there are a couple that I have used. I keep going back to Harvest. I really like Harvest in general. It integrates with QuickBooks, so my accountant is really happy. And in general, it's just a really good product. There's another one that came out. If you don't want to pay for that, because I can understand that. There's another one that came out recently called And.co, like and.co. They launched last year, and it's super. The design's super modern. There's really interesting stuff. It's really made for solo people. So if it's just you going out, this could be a really good way to kind of ramp up your billings and get your contracts and stuff in order. It's completely free. Fiverr acquired it earlier this year. It's a pretty cool little suite, and both of those allow you to do credit card transactions and take payments through PayPal or Stripe or whatever, as well as giving information for checks. So I kind of tie billing and time management together in a lot of ways, because sometimes you're not going to be billing a flat rate project. Sometimes you're going to be doing something on retainer, or you're going to be doing an hourly rate. and being able to track that time and have it automatically go into whatever your billing amount is, whatever your hourly rate's going to be, and then put that on the invoice. It just, it saves a bunch of time.
We didn't go down this rabbit hole, and it is a huge rabbit hole, but I want to bring it up, going to the idea of who should consider starting their own business. It needs to be somebody that you should be confident in your estimating abilities.
There's always a learning curve, but yeah, it's always helpful if you can do that well.
There's nothing that will tank you faster than bidding a project at 3 months that takes 9. And you're potentially tied to the amount that you bid or whatever the case may be. So that comes into play with time management. I've used Wave lately. I started with QuickBooks. I found it wasn't bad. I got frustrated with some stuff, but then I came across Wave just randomly, I think from a recommendation, and it turned out that it does a lot of what I need as a very small, like I say, my LLC is very, very tiny. It doesn't do a lot, but that's a very effective little tool for me in my situation. So I would say it's worth a look, at least if you are, looking for something to kind of do just lightweight bookkeeping, accounting.
And it's free unless you're doing payroll.
Right. That's the big thing is it could have easily drowned out like the amount of money I'm making on my freelancing stuff right now. So when we get into then, let's change over. That's business. Let's talk about the actual work though, in terms of, in particular, like I think everybody, I think we all understand using GitHub at this point for code management. And
I hope so.
I don't necessarily say that to imply that that GitHub is the answer. You could use Bitbucket. You could use GitLab.
I've used Bitbucket. I've used most of them.
A code versioning system of your choice.
GitLab is comfortable.
And you don't have to use it for just code. I mean, it's definitely, that's what it was built for, but you can use it to version anything you want. Your random copy, you can toss your invoices in there. You can put Sketch or Photoshop files in, and it'll version.
There are size limits though.
Oh, are there now? Well,
yeah,
like 100 meg photos.
Yeah,
Photoshop.
It has to be. I think it's 100 meg. It's pretty. I mean, it's big, but if you're throwing up like images or whatever up there, or like 600 DPI, like
don't do that.
Posters or
I'm a big fan actually of what syntax.fm, the Syntax podcast. If our listeners don't listen to Syntax, I don't know why you're listening to us. They're way better at what we do than what we do. But
do they drink on their podcast?
They're running a static site generator through GitHub, and their show notes and everything are GitHub powered, which is
that's awesome.
It's just a very neat feature. But tool wise, code management is easy. What about design?
Yeah. So I design primarily in Sketch these days. There are a lot of people that still use the Adobe Creative Suite. That's perfectly fine. For me, the best kind of design management in terms of systems, versioning, being able to send it out for comments, team collaboration if you need that, is InVision. It's super cool. It's got apps for syncing. They've got all kinds of crazy tools for adding comments and setting up prototypes and things like that. And then they also have a plugin for Sketch and for Photoshop that allows you to do on the fly synchronization from the app. So like you're in there, you have to make a change right away. You don't have to hit save, then go and drag it or upload it. You hit save, you hit a shortcut, and it just syncs it back up and updates the web version of it. It's super cool. It's pretty affordable. I've used a lot of design kind of organization and versioning stuff over the years. And I think InVision just waited long enough to come out on top.
Yeah. And for folks who do design, I hope that names like Sketch and InVision aren't like foreign to you. If they are, this goes back to this idea of make sure you have the experience before you dive too deep into this. if you are looking for like a UX/UI design utility and you have Creative Suite, Adobe XD is now free. That was
It's pretty good.
Adobe basically gave the middle finger to InVision. They said, you know what, fuck you. We want to dominate this market. People use Photoshop, so come at us.
Every time I see Adobe XD, I can't not see the like grinning emoticon. Yeah.
There's also a web-based one called Figma that's super, super cool.
Figma.
And I think they use
there'll be links for all these in the doobly-doo.
Yeah, we'll have links to everything. And you know, they're all strong in their own ways.
Just got to find the one that works for you, really.
Yeah. And hosting. I think hosting is an important topic too, because if you're doing web development, even if you just need to set up staging environments to show, you know, a client something before they put it on their site. I have my preference. I'm a DigitalOcean guy. I started on AWS, but DigitalOcean just kind of just came on top for me. It's so easy and so quick. It's priced.
It's priced really well. It's super easy to set up.
Scales real easily too.
I use a couple different things. I think if you're doing WordPress stuff, it's easiest to do something like Flywheel or WP Engine. And mostly it's because they give you free demo sites to just kind of set up what you want. And then when it comes time for the client to pay for it, you can just transition the billing over to them. So unless you want to be managing your own hosting, which is a model that you can definitely research and can be lucrative if you don't mind doing that, or white labeling through one of those services. For WordPress sites, it's just easy. There's a lot less you have to do with that. I'm also using a new one called GridPane that is essentially all these tools that that WP Engine and Flywheel have kind of pioneered over the years, that allow you to use your own virtual hosting. So I'm using DigitalOcean, but they also support Vultr, and I mean, you could do AWS on it. Is it Linode? It's another one that they support out of the box, and it's pretty cool. They're still kind of early and are fixing some stuff. I think I've broken every part of their hosting tools, but hopefully they're getting better. And then the last one that I love, and actually the Bravery site is up on this one, is called Netlify, and it's for static sites. So if you're doing static sites, you can just push these up to Netlify. They serve them from a CDN, and it's free.
Cool.
Oh, it's so cool.
Oh, by the way, so one of the advantages of I don't know if Bitbucket has this, but I know GitHub and GitLab both have they have a projects like tab or section on any repo that has multiple different swim lanes. You can move issues through them. They integrate tightly with pull requests and issues tracking.
GitHub's got all that. That's what we've been using instead of like Trello.
Yeah. It's really solid, and the I mean, like, they have other services will integrate with GitHub, but if you're already using GitHub anyways, why not your issue tracking in it?
Yep, totally.
And the thing I'll point out about WP Engine, when you set up, because most people will cut their teeth on WordPress early in their careers, and certainly later as well. When you set up sites in WordPress Engine, you can set up the site as a quote unquote transferable site, and as far as your client goes, you should be able to sell them on the cost of WordPress Engine, because it is a great service. Like, it's more expensive than HostGator, but you get a lot of value out of that. And for anybody who cares about their business, that's a small price as far as that goes. Let's wrap up real quick on one last topic of just the resources. What can we drive people to in terms of, if you want to go learn more? I'm a big fan of reading in general. Like, I learn well that way. And so one book, because a lot of people do this because they want to work from home, because they want to, kind of control their environment. The book from Jason Fried and David Heinleiner, the guys behind Basecamp, right? They have a book called Remote. I would absolutely recommend you grab a copy of that and read it before you do anything. I think there's a whole lot that can be gleaned from that, and can help you in terms of thinking about, especially if you're going to start, a lot of these small businesses will start out of your house, out of your home office, what you need to think about in terms of just getting things going and understanding how to balance stuff and get that organization going. If you can't tell, I'm having trouble pulling words out of my mouth now because bourbon.
I can see them floating around your head.
We have the hangout going, and it's like I'm sitting here, my hands are moving. I'm like, I know the words. They're in here. Let's get them out. Somebody save me. Give me another resource.
David Heinemeier Hansen is the guy that invented Rails.
Oh,
as
did
well,
he?
in addition
I didn't know
to being
that.
a co-founder of Bootcamp,
Right.
Basecamp.
Yeah.
He's like the guy. DHH has a lot of opinions. I don't agree with all of them, but he has a lot of opinions, and he's very interesting. His talks are always very interesting.
So I'm a big fan of freelancersunion.org. I think it's an excellent resource, especially if you're going out on your own. If you are, you should join the union, which is basically just giving them your email address. But they have a lot of resources in terms of like, a lot of stuff we talked about earlier, like what are the things you need to think about in getting something set up. And then a lot of just tips, things like how do you deal with, clients that aren't paying you, and the random things that kind of come up that I think if you're going out on your own for the
knowing
first
what
time,
to charge
or knowing what to charge. Yeah. It's sort of the stuff you just don't really, you don't know you're going to run into as you're just starting out. But everyone hits them, like, there's a,
that, I know we're running a little long, but do you have any advice about that? Because like that's something I hear a lot from people who are getting started, and I still struggle with it myself. Like I have sort of a personal formula I use, but like, how do you know what to charge when you're doing? Like, when you're the
so whatever's
principal.
in your head, charge 15% more, and then the next time you have a job, charge 15% over that until you get to a point where people are saying no, and then back off your prices, and that's how you know what you should charge. I'm completely serious.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
used a very similar technique when I was freelancing and Joel, you brought up like my .cms
Right.
days. We still, and I shouldn't say .cms days. I still use .cms in my day-to-day work. But I used to do a lot of consulting with that CMS for other companies, and I was getting so many requests because it was a very niche market, and there weren't a lot of people that were consulting in that arena. And so I used price to control demand. It was literally supply and demand in the free market. People kept coming to me, and I kept the price until I could manage what was coming in. And if you weren't willing to pay it, then I wasn't willing to give up my time at that stage. And
you get to the point where you have an FU number, and if someone says yes to it, okay, cool, you're going to make a lot of money, and you're not going to like it, but hopefully the money is going to, kind of salve that wound for a little bit.
I think starting out, I think it's safe to charge in the area of about $75 an hour if you want to put a solid number on it.
Agreed. Shouldn't be anywhere under $75 an hour if you're starting out in a specialized field.
And if you are specialized, if you truly have, going back to the portfolio, the experience, the code, the companies that I've worked with you, and you can show this, the sky is kind of the limit. I peaked around 200 an hour for some of my better stuff. I'm not afraid to say that because I think that if you're worth it, you're worth it. Can you charge $200 an hour for WordPress work these days? Hell no. No.
No.
Can't even charge standard 150 for WordPress work these days. It's really kind of frustrating.
Yeah. You need to, as we're talking about running a business, you need to know the business you're in and your market and what you can charge. And specialized design and coding is different from, a platform like WordPress that is very popular, and there's a lot of availability in that field. So if you want to make money, that's your advice. Go dig in, go find your specialization.
That's right.
I don't know why I went down that tunnel, but it felt like something that could be answered, so let's answer it. Mm-hmm. Joel, man, I want to thank you for jumping on the show with us tonight. I can't hear the thunder behind me. We've got a squall line coming through. If you know anything about Kansas, it's a little gnarly here all of a sudden, and it wasn't about 15 minutes ago.
Awesome.
I want to give you, though, before we take off, take 5 minutes. Let's tell people where they can find you. If they want to learn more what you do, if they are interested in hiring you, tell folks where you're at, where you're going to be, and anything else that you want them to know about you.
Yeah, totally. You can find our website at bravery.co. I'll give you the spiel up front, because we're kind of changing paths with Bravery. We've done a lot of just kind of simple web redesign work, and like I said earlier, we're moving more into kind of the marketing stuff. But we're trying to really kind of transition into doing service design and product development. And so we're really looking for clients that want to do really big, impactful things. This isn't, hey, my university website needs a redesign. There are a lot of agencies you can go to, and they're going to do a great job. We're looking for, how do we actually make that web design work for you in better ways? And so we recently worked with a university in Los Angeles. We built, for instance, an accepted students kind of onboarding orientation web app platform that integrates with their ERP, and we honestly basically like destroyed any semblance of melt for them over that period, which I'm pretty happy about. That's what we were trying to do, and it actually worked. We're looking to solve problems like that. Like, I truly believe that that this company that I've been building for the last 6 years exists to improve the reputations, the business functions, and the efficacy of institutions of higher education. We really, really want to propel universities and colleges towards their potential. So we're looking for, people who have bosses that will actually, get excited about doing something different and something that's actually really useful and gives them results. There are real returns on investment with the stuff that we do. So you can find how to contact me on bravery.co. There's a big button that says Contact Bravery. It goes right to me. I'm also on Twitter at Joel Goodman. I'm also on Instagram at Joel Goodman, but that's mostly pictures of food and beer and concerts and bread that I'm baking, which is great.
It's bread, lots of bread.
Your bread is fantastic.
Thank you. Bread's my backup. If I ever can't get work here anymore, I'm just gonna go to the bakery and bread all the time. Which
it's always good to have a fail-safe.
But yeah, we want to be a resource for making things better in the higher education industry. If you're not in higher ed, we do a lot of other work too. I've worked with tons of startups. Actually, like WP Engine was one of my first clients when I was in Austin. We build user-facing stuff. We want to build things that make your users and your visitors feel connected to your brand or your product or whatever it is that you're trying to sell. And I think we're pretty good at it. Yeah, hit me up if you'd like. Otherwise, I'm always happy to talk to people that are thinking about going out on their own, and would love to answer any questions you have, or just share experiences that I've had in the past. Twitter is a great way to hit me up for that.
The Drunken UX podcast is brought to you by our friends at NewCloud. NewCloud is an industry-leading interactive map provider who has been building location-based solutions for organizations for a decade. Are you trying to find a simple solution to provide your users with an interactive map of your school, city, or business? Well, NewCloud's interactive map platform gives you the power to make and edit a custom interactive map in just minutes. They have a team of professional cartographers who specialize in map illustrations of many different styles and are ready to design an artistic rendering to fit your exact needs. One map serves all of your users' devices with responsive maps that are designed to scale and blend in seamlessly with your existing website. To request a demonstration or to view their portfolio, visit them online at newcloud.com/drunkenux. That's nucloud.com/drunkenux. Well, Joel, man, thanks for joining us this evening. We were thrilled to have you on, and I know it's getting late in the evening. I don't know if the weather here is pushing down into Texas or not, but if anybody is looking for somebody to help them out, especially if you are in the higher ed space.
Me too.
I've seen Joel's work personally. I've worked with him myself on other projects. He is a great guy, great designer, good worker. Check out their website, bravery.co. I can't recommend that enough. And
Joel puts out good code.
He wears great shirts. He makes good bourbon. He makes good bread. I don't know what more you want from us, people.
Yeah. No, I mean, like some designers make nice looking code that like presents well, but the code underneath is ugly. But Joel's code is good code. I've seen it. I've worked with it. Yeah. I'll vouch for Joel's code. Well, be sure to connect with us, and you can connect with Joel as well. But you can connect with us on Twitter and Facebook /DrunkenUX, and on Instagram. If you want to see what we're drinking, Instagram.com/DrunkenUX podcast for now. Also, connect with us on Slack, DrunkenUX.com/Slack.
Oh yeah, Slack. We always forget about Slack. That's my fault. I'm taking my lessons from Aaron on the Instagram. I'm still learning how to navigate that, but I like the idea of sharing the drinks. Actually, by the time this is aired, if you go check us out, you can see what we had this evening, and know that we are true to our word in terms of what's happening here. Drunken UX is the name of the game. Be sure to tune in once a month for Build Process, where we interview not like necessarily Joel, in shorter format, and just what they're doing and what keeps them inspired. And every other Wednesday besides Build Process, we have Real-Time Overview, where we wrap up news, articles, tutorials, whatever we find interesting and think you might find interesting. And until next time, folks, I want you guys to do one thing for me, and that is to keep your personas close and your users closer.
To